Welcome to episode 17 of the new number one hit show, A Travel Talk Show, here broadcasting live again. Calling every Tuesday. We're here, 7 p.m. sharp, PST, from our base camp in Somewheres, Canada.
Yes.
Pretty exciting stuff. Episode 17, Junior.
That's amazing.
Yep. And today, as our screen, we customize our screen every week. And today we're having a special guest on our show, Mr. Roger Brooks. And he is a really well-known small and rural town development and branding specialist. So we're really excited to have Roger and to hear his story and his insights to the tourism and small town development. And hey, Carl, we're pretty stoked.
I hear he's had some great things to say. I haven't heard them myself, but I've heard lots of incredible recommendations.
Okay. So, Carl, since COVID, there's a couple things just to set up our show here. Since COVID, the small towns, and that's what we'll be discussing a lot about today, the small towns in Canada with a developed physical inventory of some sort, like our beaches, our forestry campsites, our adventure trails, our wilderness backcountry areas like that, are all of a sudden now on the radar of many Canadian travelers who live in large urban cities. It's like a rebirth of rural tourism out there right now.
It's pretty amazing. Everybody wants to get outside and go see nature, and
like
you say, they're getting out in swarms.
No, big time. The other thing too is COVID-19 has really, because of this sort of domestic tourism push of small and rural Canada, where there are opportunities for physical distancing and safety protocols are in place, the radar for many people want out of these big cities that are really COVID is front and center, right? And what we're seeing now, and which is a bit of a sad thing, is that some of these hotspot rural tourism areas are now dealing with over tourism in some selected towns. I'll give you a good example. I just read this article the other day, and it's in Gaspé, Quebec. Okay, Gaspé, as we know, is a beautiful peninsula, has gorgeous beaches, very, very cool seaside, small towns, a lot of culture, a lot of heritage. Last weekend, because it was such a beautiful weekend here in Canada, in most parts of Canada, a large number of Canadians headed north to Gaspé and from Quebec, because we got our provincial sort of domestic bubbles going on, right? So there were so many that showed up in the Gaspé Peninsula. The visitors who did not book ahead, what they had to do is they were left with no accommodations. And so what they did, the overcrowding, what they were doing is they started setting up camping on the provincial beaches and all the green spaces in the small communities. But because they did not book, Call, they went and basically overwhelmed these small communities and started to camp. And unfortunately, based on some of the media reports I'm getting back, unfortunately, there's a little bit of litter there too, which is not cool. So this is sort of becoming the new tourism challenge out there.
Yeah, it's sad to see when...
Well, and the big thing is with these urban centers, right? Because those are the hot spots. What they're trying to do now is they're trying to go and they want to get out of the urbans, which used to be, in a lot of cases, the tourism hit points. I mean, all the media overseas is Toronto, Vancouver, pretty much. So what's happening now is that Canadians are self-educating and they're looking at our small towns. And because that population shift that used to go towards international tourism, that population shift now is driving all the traffic in one direction. And that's to the small town hotspots that are already tourism destinations, but they're not equipped for this onslaught of travelers coming to their town, right? So anyways, I can't wait to hear what Roger has to say about this topic. So first things first, housekeeping. We gotta just cover some things because corporate, what they're like, right? All the I's and the T's are dotted. So the A Travel Talk Show, episode 17, is being recorded live. An edited version will be available tomorrow on our ehCanada Travel Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Tumblr, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Reddit feeds. We also publish it on our award-winning ehCanadaTravel.com website and blog, and it goes on our live scrolling feed, which is interactive, and travel ambassadors around the country and the world can join and start contributing content.
Please
Um,
do.
we really, we like to share everything about our talk, about our guest. We like to share our client stuff. All we're asking is the followers out there to please share. And we know that the majority of you like to watch the show, but if you do want to comment or ask Roger a question, by all means, there is a comment section that you can put up your comments. And if we do have time, or if we are talking about a relative topic with Roger, we will bring you on and pose that question to Roger, who is our small and rural town expert on our show today. So this is the A Travel Talk Show. We're a product of A Travel Marketing Group and ehCanadaTravel.com. My name is Greg Gerard. I am the A Travel Talk Show co-host, co-founder of ehCanadaTravel.com, which is an 18,000 page travel and booking planning website. 23rd ranked blogger in the top 1,000 global travel bloggers by Global Rise as of January 2020. And I also take a lot of pride in small town community consultant and public speaking. Not on the scale of our guest, but in a lot of ways, he's our idol and what we want to attain in our future. Right, Call?
You betcha. Can't wait to hear what he's got to say.
Oh, I'm stoked. I'm stoked.
Yeah.
We have a nickname now. People are emailing and talking, and now they're calling us the bots, which stands for Brothers of Tourism. So this is the new name that everyone's sort of feeding out there with our group that are our followers. They're sort of they're calling you a bot, Colin.
Don't know how to take that, really.
It's all good, buddy. It's
Oh,
all
yeah,
good.
no, that's perfect. I love it.
Okay. So now one of the things we start off our show before we bring Roger on is what we call A Week in Tourism. It's a little bit about what we previously were talking about. And I'm just going to share you some statistics that, as you all know, our followers and, of course, our readers is I'm pretty on to. I like to read statistics. I like to read flow charts. I like to read all that stuff. So part of the show is I share with you some of the stuff I find during the week. And as we talked earlier about the travelers are seeking out the small and rural town adventures and the chatter, the social media, the statistics, they're pretty much telling us all of this, of sort of the traveler flow within our country. There's a couple things that are playing out right now. One is the implementation of the remote working environment. Now, what's happening is the people out based on Statistics Canada, a lot of these remote working environments, some of them are staying in the communities, but a lot of them are actually going out into the small rural areas that have internet and setting themselves to work from there in a positive sort of reclusive environment, right? So Stats Canada, overall, approximately 4 in 10, 39-ish% of Canadian workers are in jobs that can plausibly be carried out by home. So sort of we're changing sort of the working environment through this whole COVID situation. So give you a comparison. Statistics Canada said in March 2020 Perspective Survey Series, they found that as many workers as 39.1% were remote working during the last full week of March as of statistics in 2020. Taken together, these findings suggest the Canadian labor market responded extremely quickly to the onset of the pandemic by increasing the opportunity to do remote working. Now, do you want to know the province who are leading the remote working charge?
Yes, please.
Okay. Ontario, Quebec, and British Columbia were leading the remote working charge. And here's what's really cool about this, the whole remote working survey and the statistics that are coming out is that most of the remote working opportunities were coming from the finance and insurance. They're saying about 85% of the finance and insurance industry can work from the remote locations.
Okay.
And then came educational services, which was 85%. And then it was the professional, scientific, and technical services industry, which was 84% of them have a situation where their job enables them to take the opportunity of working from the remote situation. Here's the ones that didn't have that opportunity, and it sort of impacts our industry is agriculture, forestry, fishing, and hunting. They weren't finding that they were able to work from remote locations, and same with accommodation and food services.
Hmm.
So again, those sort of make sense, right? Can't run a hotel from your cottage
Yeah.
in Kenora. So those
Here's
sort
your
of make
lunch.
sense. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Let's go fishing, but I'm not coming with you.
yeah.
It's not going to work, right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of weird some of the trends, and then we're also seeing an increase in the concept of moving away from big urban centers. So again, what's happening is people are saying, this country living, this small town living, it's pretty stokum cool, and I'm getting
Yeah.
a lot of I'm starting to, because now I'm tasting it. I'm starting to see that I can have my job and I can work from a nice cottage, small town environment. So Royal LePage CEO came out, Phil Soper, and this is pretty makes you think. He said online viewership of Ontario listings outside of Toronto in the suburban and in the small town regions are on the rise to such an extent they saw an 83% jump online of people
Wow.
looking at rural, small, and ex-urbanite properties. And
Mm.
it's really interesting that this is happening because now they're saying, it's so the remote working and the moving are sort of hand in hand now. It's sort of opening eyes of the
Yeah.
opportunities our small towns provide, of
Hmm.
the rich living environment, the healthy lifestyle, the communal community togetherness, the support for one another. I know your name, you know my name. Pass my sugar, here's your sugar.
Yeah.
That's sort of communal and very small town. And we grew up in
Yeah.
small towns. We're big small town favorites,
Hmm.
and it was really interesting how these sort of trends are starting to establish themselves. And it's I don't know if anyone was really particularly predicting some of the trends that are coming out. Right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, like you say, I mean, people are discovering or rediscovering what it's like to work from home and not to drive and have to commute
Yep.
hours every day. And I mean, there's
Yep.
so many benefits,
Yep.
plus the nature and the community, like you say. And it's a very addicting way if you can do your job remotely. Um,
Yep.
it's pretty tough to go back, I'd imagine.
Well,
I would
I
have
mean,
it tough to go back.
well, I mean, look at ourselves. I
Oh.
mean, look at ourselves. We look at ourselves. We're all about working out of small towns, going to
Yeah.
small town. And Roger, if and he can correct me if I'm wrong, is exactly the sort of the same thing. He set up himself
Hmm.
mobilely, set himself to go from small town to small town,
Yeah.
and that is and the nice thing about having Roger on at this time, Colin, is that the small and rural towns today in North America, they're playing with a new set of rules and the game has changed.
Yeah.
And that's why you need people like ourselves, Roger, and other people out there that are in tune with the industry. That's where it really benefits to hear people like Roger, because what happened 6 months ago is a different sort of playbook than what we're dealing with now.
Oh.
And I think the playbook we're dealing with now has a lot more chapters than the playbook previously. So there's a lot more, there's a bigger addendum, there's bigger charts, there's more books, there's more chapters on it because it's a lot of different curves that everyone and turns and twists and bumps and bruises that everyone's dealing with. Because this really hasn't happened before in anyone's lifetime.
No, and it's affected everybody's life and business and jobs. So, I mean,
Yep.
everybody's got to adjust, but it does give the opportunity to improve.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This is huge. It's huge. So that is why, Colin, I'm really happy to invite Roger Brooks to our online talk show today. Let me just tell you a little bit about Roger. I mean, I'd love to read his whole resume, but this is only a 1 hour show. So I really had to pick and choose my highlights. And Roger, I'm sure is going to fill in the ones that I missed, but holy mackerel, we need a 2 hour show for this gentleman. So here's the
Right.
best I could do with his information. I thought I'd start off with one of his quotes because I really like it. It says, every community has the potential of becoming a thriving, sustainable, and desirable place to live, invest in, and visit, stated by Roger Brooks. Now, that is so true.
Hmm.
And I'm excited to hear how he's going to expand on that. So, Roger, just to give you viewers and future viewers, as we publish this all over tomorrow, Roger has worked in over 2,000 communities, Colin, with their branding of tourism, downtown development, marketing efforts, community development, including our friends in Merritt and
Yes.
Whistler. He's actually he's got his footprint. He's got his insignia embedded in those communities. And I know right now for the people in Merritt that will be watching this tonight or tomorrow, they were all over us on social media and the email box about having Roger on the show. So it's good to know he has a very large fan club,
Yeah, I
right?
was listening to what he had to say earlier, and I was very impressed by
Yeah.
the little bit that I've heard so far. So,
Exactly. So, and Roger is not just a guy. There's a you go through the internet. There's a lot of public speakers that say they're a public speaker, may not have ever public spoken. Roger's a certified speaking professional, so
um,
he's got all the passports stamped to do what he does, and he's got all the credentials to. So he knows what he's talking about. He is,
nice.
in a nutshell, an urbanist, a futurist, an innovator, an author,
Wow.
a placemaking expert, motivational speaker for community development and branding. Now say that really fast 3 times. You can't. You can't do it. It's a tongue twister, right?
Yeah.
Roger is one of North America's most popular keynote speakers on the topic, and here's his wheelhouse: trends and realities that are reshaping cities everywhere, the resurgence of downtowns, changing demographic, and what it means to the future, which is exactly what we need to talk about today,
Hmm.
and how
Hmm.
to become a sought after traveler destination. So, transformation of community branding, right?
Nice.
So, I think what we should do, Colin, is we're going to bring our guest on the show and let us introduce to you the great Mr. Roger Brooks.
Thank
Hello,
you.
Roger.
Hello, Greg and Colin. I'm glad to be on the
Yes.
show.
Thank
Nice to
you.
have you, Roger. Nice to have you. I hear you're doing your thing on the road, collecting and talking, and you're pretty excited about being on the road again, I'm sure.
Yes, I was working up in Port McNeill, British Columbia,
Right.
Yep.
on the northern tip of Vancouver Island,
Yep.
and we came back down, went over the border in Vancouver, and the next day they shut it down, and that was the
No.
last
Oh, ho, ho, ho.
and that was the last time I've been able to travel. All the speaking engagements were canceled, all the public
Oh,
meetings were canceled, everything came to a screeching halt. But
Wow.
luckily, we were able to provide advice for how people, besides us, how do you get through this, and what do we do next? And every day it changes.
Yeah, it does. It's such a fast turning pages of a book right now, eh?
Yeah, I thought conferences and everything would be back in gear by Labor Day. And
Yep.
chances are, now we're telling people just wait till 2021 for larger groups and everything. So it's a moving target, and it's kind of make it as you go.
Yeah, yeah. So Roger, like I like to do is I like to research all our guests, so I make sure I represent them well. But I am sure there's a little bit more. You could tell us a little bit about Roger Brooks International and the Destination Development Association. Maybe you can fill us a little bit in on these two ventures of yours.
Sure. The Roger Brooks International is basically me out there speaking, or if somebody needs consulting, then we come in and partner with people like yourselves and do that. But then we created the Destination Development Association, which communities, chambers of commerce, community futures, tourism, destination marketing organizations, cities, counties, provinces join. And then every month we do webinars on different topics. We've done several with COVID, and it really expands across branding, which is, what do you want to be known for? What sets you apart from everyone else? Number two is, how do you tell the world you exist? And then number three, downtowns are really important to tourism. I started my career in tourism, and then I realized that downtowns is where 80% of the non-lodging tourism spending takes place.
Okay.
Shopping, dining, and entertainment are the top activities of visitors once they arrive. And
Wow.
so that's
wow.
why downtowns and tourism need to be joined at the hip.
Mhm.
Okay. That's a pretty heavy stat, eh?
It is, that's 80% of tourism spending is shopping, dining, and entertainment. So
Wow.
you have to give us a reason to come. But if we're out there hunting, fishing, hiking, biking, we don't need to spend any money. It's before we head out during the day that we're provisioning up, or it's when we get back that we're spending more time and more money. Because the primary activity that draws us, we only spend 4 to 6 hours with that. How many hours can you downhill ski in Revelstoke or Whistler? How many hours do you go river rafting? How many hours do you play golf? All the primary activities take 4 to 6 hours, yet the average visitor is active 14 hours a day. So that means they have 8 to 10 hours of what else do you have for me? And that's where you need to benefit and get your spending going, because tourism is about spending. To help communities, people have to spend money, and that's not come for free and use all your trails. And so that's really, really important. And that's where the downtowns come in.
Yeah, and that's so true. That the initial attraction, the initial adventure is a very small part of your day and a very small time expense to do it. And you do, and I totally agree. I'm a big believer the downtown needs to be an attraction in itself.
And here's the trick: is if you as locals don't hang out in your own downtown, neither will visitors. They go where you go.
That is so.
Yes.
So every time working in a town, and I talk to locals, say, so when friends and family visit you, remember that's the number one reason people travel is visit friends and family. And that's what we're doing during COVID. So when they come and visit you, where do you take them?
Yeah.
Where do you take them? And if you're taking them over to Kimberly or somewhere else, that's a bigger attraction, then you got some work to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So Roger, that's a good segue into the next one is, when I was reading through your literature, I was caught off and impressed with some of the quotes that I was finding and how they resonated with myself. One of them was that you said every community has the ability to be a thriving, sustainable, and desirable place to live, invest in, and visit. What are some of the challenges that you found holding communities back from realizing their full potential prior to COVID? Because the next one, the next question is going to be now, how's that changed? But prior to COVID, what were some of the old challenges communities were facing?
Yeah, and I'll tell you one thing. First of all, every community, I'll give you just one example. There's the little town of Oatman, Arizona. So it's not in BC or anything, but I'm just using one for an example. It's on the old Route 66. The population is 200. But here's the trick, is every day out of the hills in Oatman, Arizona, wild burros come down into the town. And people, for a while, more carrots per capita than any place in North America.
Yeah.
Because people buy the carrots and feed the donkeys. So for every community, what you have to have is, what do you have that makes you worth a special trip? And it could be just one section, a river that's just dynamite for river rafters. It might be a trail that has incredible vistas. So any town of 200, 300, and by the way, in Oatman, Arizona, 500,000 visitors a year. So it doesn't matter whether you have 100 people or 200 or 300 or 3,000. What happens is, what do you have? And you have to be either different or better. When I started working at Whistler, we had one goal, is we knew we weren't going to be different because there's lots of ski areas, but we had to be better. And our goal is to knock Vail off of its list. Vail was like the number one ski place in North America, which we did. And for decades, Whistler has been the number one rated destination ski resort. Yeah. But here's something that's interesting about Whistler. They do more business in the summer than they do in the winter. And that is a testament to Whistler Village, the downtown, where it's become attraction on its own.
Yeah. Yeah, and we had a client that used to run the big hotel in Pemberton there, and she was there prior to Whistler having a summer, and that was their big gap in the marketing, is they didn't have that summer. And then she said they really went headstrong into mountain biking, and like you said, now it's sort of a reverse situation there.
It is people. People are gravitating to the outdoors, as you mentioned earlier. People with this social distancing, RVing, camping, all of those things are sky high. and they all want to get away from the crowd. So we're heading out of Vancouver and Victoria and Calgary and Edmonton and looking for the rural areas, primarily within a day's drive, like 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And that is really helping these small communities. But still, when we go on the internet, what do they have that makes them worth that 2.5 hour drive? And that's what we're communities do. What do we have that makes us special besides friendly people?
Yep.
And besides small town charm, because there's a gazillion towns that have those things. So what is it? What's that one thing? And you got to find that and hang your hat on it. I could give a perfect example of Squamish. I mean, nearly 30% of the Squamish population is from Australia, the UK, New Zealand. And they started with rock climbing. It's like one of the best rock climbing destinations in the world. And now Squamish is the youngest city in Canada.
Wow.
When I started working in Whistler, we wouldn't stay in Squamish. I lived in North Van because Squamish was timber guys. It was as redneck as you could be in mining.
Yeah.
And now look at it.
Yeah.
And that is the power of small towns and what they can achieve.
Yeah. And is it maybe one of the barriers that small towns, that when we come in to talk with them, is that sometimes they don't even know what's good and it's right in front of their eyes.
And that's why sometimes we do a thing called a destination assessment, where we go in there, we kind of secret shop them to say, well, look, we saw this. And sometimes what you have that's really special, you might not think twice about it.
Yeah.
Because it's just right there. You see it every day and you don't realize, no, visitors would love that. So sometimes, for instance, in Squamish, even though they've got the chief and now they have the sea to sky gondola and everything, you'd be surprised how many people make a special trip there, because you can go out on the inlet there and see hundreds of eagles within a few meters of you. And people come and they say, well, they're almost a pest to the people in Squamish, to visitors. That's pretty incredible. So sometimes you need to take a look at your community through the eyes of an outsider, because maybe you have something there that you're not leveraging that maybe could really take you to the next level.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe if I can sort of add to that, is another thing that we noticed with Squamish is once they start to develop that rock climbing and they start to develop that industry and sort of niche themselves, I think a big thing that's really impressive with some of these small communities is they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
No.
One of the things that Squamish is on the Spit. They have this kite surfing and windsurfing, and it is one of the best in Canada. And that again backs up their rock climbing and gives them a two-prong approach.
It does. And when we were working in Squamish, I said, we all know the sea to sky highway, but they've got sea and sky. You can be climbing the Chief and 20 minutes later be stand-up paddleboarding out there with killer whales, which are orcas, which are coming back into the sound near Squamish. Yep. I mean, where else can you do mountain biking, rock climbing, and be on the ocean or on the water all within 10 minutes of each other? Pretty incredible.
It is incredible. I'm just going to do a shout out here. Welcome, Mr. Brooks. Merritt is watching. It is good to see you again.
And Merritt is another, I spoke to a couple of years ago and it was awesome. They've got a great little plaza in their downtown, and it's a walkable downtown, which is important. Yeah. And if you can get your people to hang out more downtown, granted, we got to get past the COVID thing, but once you make it a place that your locals are so proud of, that's where they hang out, then when friends and family visit them, they're going to hang out there. And then visitors, and by the way, when friends and family start talking about this on Facebook and Instagram and everything, then that's how the word spreads. It's amazing how far you can go. And so, Merritt has all the bones, everything there to really become an outstanding destination.
And the Traveler is your best guerrilla marketing tool.
No question.
Get them to share, post, and everything. I mean, that is one of the tools I think is if we can really drill home, the Traveler is your best marketing tool.
And I agree. And one thing I always tell people all the time, Facebook is how we communicate with our families, with each other. Instagram is how we tell the world. So having both of those is really powerful. And of course, Instagrammers will say only my parents are on Facebook. Yeah. But don't write off the boomers yet. They're still the biggest spenders out there, and they've got disposable income.
And if you're looking at the tourism industry a whole in Canada, most of the tourism businesses have Facebook, and that's about it. So if you want to connect with the tourism industry in Canada, you have to have a Facebook presence, because majority of them, that's all they got. They might have an Instagram, they might have a Twitter, but they all have Facebook.
Yeah, and Instagram is growing places. So we were working in Newfoundland, and in Newfoundland they have Grossmore National Park.
Oh yeah.
And when all of a sudden these visitors, Newfoundland ran some incredible commercials a few years back, and then the Instagrammers went there, and then they brought in a whole nother audience from all over the world. And so yeah, having both is incredibly important.
Yeah. So we'll lead into the next one here, Roger. In one of your presentations, I was reading through one of the presentations that you call Shift Happens. So that's
Shift Happens.
SHIFT for you bad boys out there. That's how it's shift.
Yes.
Shift happens. It's relevant now. That presentation, when I glanced through some of your topics and your key points there, is relevant. It's more relevant now than ever before, for one. For communities during this challenging time of COVID-19, it's pretty much like predicting bang on perfect topic for this, of how the shift happens. And although I have not been privileged enough to have seen the presentation live, I have read into it and delved into it, and the future of cities and towns and the power of placemaking in a rapidly changing. So my question to you, Roger, is this: is if the world has changed fast and drastically, the playbooks are being thrown out, new ones are being written. Would you please maybe share with us or explain to us the philosophy behind Shift Happens and how it pertains to this COVID-19 era?
Yeah, and I actually did Shift Happens even before we ran into this pandemic, because a couple of things happened. We've been in so many communities, particularly rural ones, where people always say, oh, I like it the way it was. I want to go back to the way it was in the 70s. We want it to be the way it used to be. And that ain't happening. There's no more Mayberry. There's no more Leave It to Beaver days. The world is changing. For instance, let me give you a few statistics. In the 1950s and 60s, the average time somebody ate dinner was 5:30 to 6. Today, it's 7 to 7:30. Whoa. And yet in Western Europe, they're eating dinner at 9 o'clock at night. Yet I've been in many rural communities where the restaurants shut down at 7. And here's another one. 70% of all consumer retail spending, in bricks and mortar stores, takes place after 6 p.m. So why in the rural towns, if you want us out there playing golf, riding, biking, all of the things you have to offer in BC are pretty much daytime activities. It doesn't matter whether it's whale watching or whatever it is. And then we come back to your town after 6 and you're already closed.
Yeah.
And so these are some of the things where shift is happening, and you have to jump back on it. But the towns that roll up their sidewalks at 5 and 5:30, and then you wonder why everybody's buying everything on Amazon or at Walmart or Canadian Tire or places that get it, and they're open later. Yeah. And so the small businesses also have to learn that. So this shift is part of that. Even the demographic is shifting, like multi-generational travel, where grandparents are going out with their kids and their grandkids, even with COVID. And with that in the background, they feel, well, we're a close-knit family, we're going to go out. And so there's many things to that, but and it's really, really important. But the biggest one, I think, is people need to understand, and I just jumped on this bandwagon myself, the power of camping, RVing, that is changing everything.
Yep.
And so more, as a matter of fact, RVing in 1 year has become a $50 billion industry just in the US. So take a portion of that to Canada, like $10 billion. There are sales of RVs, and places like Cruise Canada, Cruise America, they're booked up months in advance, and they're all heading to the rural areas. So communities need to start promoting their campgrounds. And granted, we still want people to stay in hotels, but right now people are taken that way because it's easy to self-distance. It's easy to be in a self-contained rig.
Yeah.
And so it is really an important thing, particularly now, and is something that rural communities can really jump on.
Oh, and it's so true because as you know, in Merritt, there's like 200 wilderness lakes here, and a lot of them have those forestry campgrounds, right?
Right.
They are packed. And the thing is what you're seeing is exactly what you stated, Roger, is that even though they're not staying in a hotel, they're coming in the community and they're spending money in the restaurants, the pubs, the gift stores.
But here's another thing is, you think of the typical tourist comes in, they stay in a hotel, motel, an Airbnb, wherever they're staying, and then they do eat at your restaurants, they go in your little galleries and stuff. But here's the difference. RVers, again, well, they don't spend anything, but you have to remember how much fuel, how much petrol they're using, whether it's diesel or gas. And then you got to imagine they provision up at grocery stores. They go to auto parts stores. They go to the hometown hardware stores. So what's happening is RVers tend to shop in the place that your locals shop and not necessarily in the tourist traps. But it's still outside spending taking place in your community. So you can't discount that.
Yes.
As being an RVer myself, I'm telling you, every time we go past an Ace Hardware or Home Hardware, we got to stop. There's something we got to need, right?
Very good point.
You got another shout out here from Melvina White. Unbelievable information. Everyone needs to hear this speaker and the topic of this current show. Tanya Stewart gives the bots a little bit of a shout out, and then she goes, a big salute to you, your guest, Roger Brooks. A couple big shout outs for you there, Roger. Here in Canada, Roger, and I'm sure you're all up to date on these, but maybe this is more for our viewers. Right now, with our international tourism, that's pretty much a dead halt. We're running at about 30% occupancy on our flights, and that is not making them any money. So they're trying to change some of the rules so they can fill more seats. Then we're looking at our international visitations. Well, that's nil. And hotel occupancy. Right. In some areas, like in the bigger cities, in the midtown cities, is around 35%. What does the Roger Brooks crystal ball say about the recovery of tourism domestically and internationally? And how do you see this recovery rolling out? Because it seems to change every week. It seems to be we're going to do this, and then a week later we're doing this. So what are you seeing and what are you feeling?
Well, first of all, a couple of things. I think people keep calling this the new normal. It's not. It's the new abnormal.
Yeah.
And this new abnormal means it's not going to stay. You know what? We're human beings, and human beings we network together. We get together in groups. That's what humans do. I really believe that 2021 it's going to be back to normal, where we can actually shake hands with somebody, where we can give somebody a hug. And I really believe that 2021, we will start to get back to some normalcy. So this new abnormal, I think there are some things that will change. I think people will be more conscious on washing their hands, using the sanitizer, things like that. But I really believe that we will get back to normal in 2021. Now, I was the first one to say we would get back to normal in October, but then as people started to loosen up, we started seeing resurgences. And some of those resurgences were caused because we started doing protests and large groups got together these protests. You watch them on the news and hardly anyone's wearing a mask. So some of that, is really what I call the new abnormal. But I really believe that this year you got to buckle down and try to make it through the year, because I don't see your hotels being back at occupancy in September, October, November, December. But I do believe that in January, February, even myself, I said, I'm not going to get on a plane till after Labor Day. Yeah. And so, and so right now we're doing, what I call live virtual events. But I do believe that we'll get back together. I don't, so this is the new abnormal. And I think it pretty much makes this year a basket case. I hate to say it. But you also have to understand a lot of the press scares people to death. And maybe it's rightfully so, to force people to social distance and things. But, overall, I really believe that there will be a vaccine, and that already cases are going down in some areas. They're still still tend to be going up in some of the urban areas. But I really believe that we'll start loosening it up, and I think that next year we'll get back to the real normal with some little more precautions about if we're sick or feeling sick, we're going to stay home.
Yeah.
And I mean, I was in a store once, I saw somebody just sneeze, and I got to tell you, they all of a sudden it just went boom. Everybody was at least 20 meters away.
Yeah.
And so I think some of that will still hang on. But I think we're going to learn. And I think that the people that are most at risk, you have to understand nearly 90% of the deaths have been from people that had other precautions. So those people are the ones that really need to stay even more vigilant, even next year as we get back to normal.
Yeah. And maybe just a quick sidebar there, Roger. What about what's your take on the international tourism market?
I think that will start to rebound next spring. The U.S. Travel Industry Association, U.S. Travel, has already said that this year's pretty much we're going to write it off for international. I mean, here, in the States have been locked out of a lot of Canada and been locked out of all of Western Europe and the Caribbean and everything, even though 99% of Americans have never had COVID. Or don't even test positive for it, but still, that 1% can be something. So I really believe that Canada has to rely on Canada this year. Yeah. Get Canadians, and people are staying closer to home. So this is your opportunity to get Vancouver to come and visit you, Victoria to come visit you, get Calgary to head west, and Edmonton, even Saskatoon. But I really believe this is the year Canada has to rely on Canada and not international, just like the States can't rely on Canada or international this year. And that's the tough, bad news.
Yeah. Okay. I got you there. So in tourism, then the focus here in Canada, and you're probably up to speed on this too. I'm just going to bring it for our audience, gets caught up to where we're at. The tourism focus for every community in Canada this summer is domestic markets, and that's pretty much a worldwide phenomenon right now. Australia, New Zealand, Germany, they're all focusing on that domestic. So the early results indicate that the winners are small towns, rural towns, where physical distancing, safety protocols are followed. And in a lot of cases in Canada, it's the small town that is piggybacking a beach or a campground, a good campground format or a good campground structure. Cottage resorts are in the area. So, however, that it's such a small percentage of tourism when you look at our national tourism market. This very small, minute towns with beaches, campground, cottage resorts, and wilderness that they can play in. So, in our industry here, and I'm sure in the States, a lot of our tourism businesses rely on 4 months to pay 12 months of bills. It's do or die for the majority of our business. So my question, Roger, is this: what advice would you share with tourism businesses today who, as I think we all agree on this panel, tourism's true recovery is next year? So what has come to the realization that we have to find, and how are they going to, what would you give them as advice to get through this into 2021 when they get that 4 months again?
Well, first of all, one of the things I talk about in the Shift Happens presentation is that you have to understand baby boomers, which are still in their active years, they have high disposable incomes. Their peak months for travel are April, May, September, and October. So you have to get out of this long weekend May and Labor Day mindset. Those days are over. So if you want to get the highest spenders that can come during the school year, then that's going to be your boomers, and they're traveling in March, April, May, September, and October. I always say if you can create an 8-month season, you're going to be doing well. One thing you have to understand, even in the RV industry, is that if you go on YouTube and look at solar, boondocking is when we're dry camping. That is when we're out there. There's no electricity, but we have solar panels on the roof, and we water up. We'll buy water at local towns, and we just go out there in the boondocks, so to speak. Yeah. That is huge, and I really believe this is a new trend. Did you know there's 1 million people living full-time in RVs just in the U.S., and Canada is on their radar? I mean, you've got the Kootenays, you've got Nelson, you've got of course, the Canadian Rockies, you've got Vancouver Island and the Gulf Island. I mean, just look at what you have.
Yeah.
And so I really believe these rural communities got to go after that market. And that will really supplement you, because the other thing is RVers are not just summer travelers. As a matter of fact, most of them like traveling when everybody else isn't out there.
Yes.
Good point. Excellent point. That is so true. Yep. That's very true.
I tell communities all the time, look, if you want to have a sustainable tourism industry, and I'm the first one to say tourism shouldn't be your only industry, but I will tell you that tourism is the front door to your non-tourism economic development.
Yes.
Anybody that's going to come there is going to come first as what? A visitor.
Yes.
Is this a place I want to live? My family want to live. My workers would want to live. So tourism is that front door, and every single community can open that door and start with RV or start with people. You don't have to have polished campgrounds. Yeah. You just have to have places where people can go and enjoy themselves and go, my gosh, I love this place.
Yeah. Yeah. Tony Luck says a big thank you to you, Roger, for the great insight he brings to communities like ours. So Tony's giving you a shout out, Roger, there.
Great.
Roger, there's there's something here that I actually was looking at today as I was refreshing my gerbil in my brain on our show tonight. I was wondering, like, Roger, can you offer any insight? And I know you got this book coming up, but the title of this book twigged me, and I'm going, okay, now I'm interested. Now I want to know. Maybe you could tease me a little with this, Roger. I don't want you to give away the farm because I want to buy the book, so don't give away the farm. But your upcoming book's title, and get this, people, it's such a cool cut, The 20 Ingredients of an Outstanding Downtown. So maybe you can give us a little lead into this new book you got coming out, when it's coming out, and where we'd be able to pick it up.
And that came out of research. We spent 7 years researching 2,000 downtowns in the U.S. and Canada.
Okay.
All across Canada, big and small. And we looked for, out of those 2,000, we found 400 of the most successful downtowns that we could find, or downtown districts, whether it's, in a downtown gas town in Vancouver or wherever. And what we did is we found what were the 20 most common ingredients they had. And then we put that together, and it's in a presentation. We have videos actually in the Destination Development Association library of those. But it includes things. Did you know that 70% of first-time sales comes from curb appeal?
Wow.
70%. Think about this. I go to audiences and say, we all travel. How many times have you ever said these words? That looks like a nice place to eat. We judge the book by the cover.
Yes.
Another ingredient is, do you have public parking? If you have a popular downtown, is it easy to find parking? That's one of those ingredients. Do you have blade signs? Blade signs are perpendicular to us. When we come walking down your sidewalk or driving through your town, we look at blade signs that are perpendicular to us. Do you have those? So there's 20 of those different ingredients that any town can use to say, how are we doing on this? Yeah. And it's funny but we picked 400 of the best downtowns, and that's were the 20 ingredients. It was a major research project. That book will be coming out probably this fall, now that I have more time to actually work on it.
Yeah.
And that'll be a good one for, people in tourists say, well, we're a destination marketing organization. And what I tell people all day is, you're going to be judged by your product, not your marketing.
Yes.
And here's a quote you can use, is that marketing will bring people to you once. The only thing that brings them back is your product.
Yes.
Yes.
And that is your primary attractions and your complementary activities. And that's where downtown is. Museums, all those things are complementary. They're not the main reason we typically go there, but they're the top activities once we arrive.
Yes. Yes.
So that's really important.
That is, and very, 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 very good points, Roger. Colin, pretty excited about this tonight. Roger's come up with some really good stuff, and a lot of communities need to take this stuff home. Roger, where can I get that book?
Boy, when you're ready, it'll be on Amazon. Right now, I do have another book. It's called Your Town, An Amazing Destination. and it has the 25 immutable rules of successful tourism. Now, if nobody knows what immutable is, it's never changing. So these are rules that are not just COVID or pre-COVID or post-COVID. These are rules that have been around for a long time, and that one's already on Amazon. You know, and that's a fun read. We just did that just was republished this year, and with a lot more updated information in it. Excellent. So, but the other one will be on Amazon. Look for it this fall. Okay. And that would be great.
You got to make sure you get the boss lady. I love how you call her the boss. Make sure you get, it's Natalie, right?
Natalie is, she's our gatekeeper. I always tell everybody, you know, I just go wherever Natalie sends me and whatever she says. And then they'll say, boy, I need Natalie to talk to my husband. I can't get him to do anything.
Yeah. And a good shout out to Natalie. If you're watching, we've really enjoyed going back and forth with her. She's a very well representative of you, Roger. And I think it's important that we give her a shout out and an acknowledgement.
That's great. Well, we took an 11-week road trip from Arizona, California, Nevada, Oregon, Washington. And unfortunately, we didn't get time to get up into BC, but BC and Alberta are on our list for next year for 11 weeks. And so that'll be great. But and so a lot of the times I've been out of communication. We're in those rural areas where there's no cell service. And so Natalie has been kind of the lifeline. And luckily I was able to visit my folks, which live on the Washington coast. That's where this is coming to you from. And they have wired internet. So I was like, whoo, this works.
Yeah. And thank you to both of you for making that effort to hook up, as this is live and internet does mean a lot to this show's success.
Yeah, you bet.
Pretty vital.
Yeah. So again, May Keeter of Merit is saying that, just to bring you up to speed, they're working on a Bladeside project for downtown.
And blade signs are both one of the rules in Your Town, an Amazing Destination, and it's in the 20 ingredients. Blade signs are really important. A great example, I think Kimberly has a lot of them, but if you ever go over into Alberta, go to Canmore.
Yeah.
They have one of those 400 outstanding downtowns. As a matter of fact, we always say that Canmore's clean Banff's clock. You know, and so those are good examples. So that's great, doing the blade signs. That's really good for your businesses, and just keep them consistent height, you know, so it doesn't create sign clutter. Yeah. And because you want your downtown to be intimate. So no backlit fluorescent signs. Those died out in the 70s. Yeah. Just beautiful signs that are maybe, sorry, speaking feet and inches, but, you know, I always say, 18 inches tall and no wider than a meter, and, you know, no more than two meters off the ground, you know, so keep them consistent and you'll do great.
Excellent. Well, Natalie here is saying thanks for the shout out, and she's saying I'm watching to make sure you behave.
Yeah, that's usually how it works. Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. So, Roger, before we let you go, we're going to leave you with an open end here, so you can plug in what you think is pertinent for our audience. Is there anything you would like to leave us with? Any advice? Any observations? Any guidance?
Well, you know, we always talk about supernatural British Columbia, and I know that there's other provinces watching, but that supernatural British Columbia applies to everybody everywhere in British Columbia, from Fort McNeil up on the northern tip to Tofino and all of Vancouver Island and all the inland waterways, and even over in the mountains, Nelson and the Cusp and all those little towns over on the other side, and everything, even in the center, you know, where you got a Soyuz and Kamloops. And I mean, what you have is absolutely amazing. Mm-hmm. It is absolutely amazing. And you may take it for granted. Most people do. Look at where you live. But find your niche and promote it like crazy. That one thing that makes you worth a special trip. And here's what you can do. Say, I think we have this, and then pick a little town out in the middle of nowhere, 2.5 hours away, and think to yourself, if they had it, would you make the trip there? That's a good litmus test on whether your idea is enough to pull people in. And if you do that, find your one thing. Don't promote something for everyone does not work.
Yes. Because
that applies to everybody. So find your niche, promote it like crazy. And I guarantee you, no matter how small your town is, like those donkeys in Oatman, Arizona, you will succeed. And with the power of social media, what took years to do, you could do in 90 days.
Yeah. Very, very, very sound advice. Well, Roger, Mr. Brooks, Mr. Small Town, thank you so much for joining us today
Yes.
and making the effort of coming to us from beautiful Washington, and say hi to Mom and Dad. It
Will
was
do.
very, very pleasurable to have you, and I'm looking forward to meeting you in person sometime in our travels.
That'd be great.
We'll see how that goes. And again, Roger, thank you so much for your time, and we're going to have to let you go, and
All right.
we'll keep in touch.
All the best.
Yeah. We'll hold you to that trip to Canada there.
You bet. I will do it. Have me back on, and I'll tell you.
You're on our radar now.
Yeah. Okay,
Thanks,
Roger.
Roger.
Take care. So that was Roger Brooks, a small town and rural community consultant. And as our viewers have obviously noticed, very knowledgeable, very, very smart man, lots of experience, lots to talk about. And I got to say, and I'm going to throw in a caveat, he is quite a real cool dude, Call.
A cool dude indeed. I'm still processing all the information, and
Yep.
it's so many good points about small towns and downtowns.
Yep.
And
And you know what? And I've been to we both, Colin, have been to a lot of speakers, eh? And I could tell you, and I'm a big believer of this when I public speak, and Roger is, again, a very good role model to follow. His enthusiasm and his belief
Yes.
in his product is so obvious.
His passion.
Oh, you could tell. You
Yeah.
know, and those are the people you want to, those are the people that resonate with you. Those are the people that leave you with a message to take home. We've all been to it. We've all gone to big seminars, and then we find ourselves with the head nod during the show, right? Or the people beside you give you the elbow shove to make sure, you stay away. But I don't see that happening at all. Not for one second at Roger's presentations and any of his public speaking.
It's the elbow in the side telling you to shut up and listen.
Yeah, exactly. So again, next week, Colin, a little intro. We have Jay Melsmore of Island Innovation. Now, again, another great guest. Now, just to bring you up to speed, because we have a lot of international guests here as well, and he works together with the private sector, government, utilities, NGOs, and universities to advance innovation for sustainability and prosperity in island communities. We're looking forward to talking with James also, and that's next week, Tuesday, 7 p.m. PST on your show, the ehTravel Talk Show. The Canadian show is brought to you by the ehTravel Marketing Group. We are your boots on the ground, small and rural community marketing consultant and strategist, and the ehCanadaTravel.com website network. We're the largest privately operated booking, planning, and interactive website out there. 18,000 pages of travel information, 16,000 photos. So again, let's work on this staycations. Let's make sure, as Roger said, let's market to the 250-kilometer circle around your community. We encourage people to sign on our website. We have a COVID special, which I believe we're going to talk about a bit more next week. You can get online and start registering now. It's free to register. We have a COVID, and we are increasing. We have a 23% increase in our traffic over last year because we specialize in Canadian travel and staycation marketing. So make sure you sign on. Now, all you Canadians out there boogieing and traveling and exploring and doing your thing, join us as a Canadian travel adventure ambassador and start loading up your information. Start participating in your country's brand. Start telling us how much you love this country, how you love where you're going. Share your videos, share your photos, join online, and then we select some of the top ones, and we'll share them on our 8 social media platforms, which are rocking and rolling as we speak, and it's free to register.
Show us how beautiful your area is and your community is.
You know it, Junior. Anything else, Junior, you want to talk about Roger, about us?
Still processing all the information, bro. like you say, get out there and show us what you got and how beautiful your community is, which backs up with what Roger is saying. I mean, yeah, learn what you got in your area and share it with the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so that's another show in the books. We're very happy to have had Roger Brooks. Please tune in
Yes.
tomorrow on any of our social media. It will be up, an edited version. We'll have it. If you want the live blooper pass version, then you can watch this one in about 15 minutes. As soon as we shut off, you'll be able to rehash this. Please share. Share's
Yes.
everything in our world, so please share.
Yep.
And that's pretty much our show for tonight from somewhere Canada. My name's Greg.
My name's Colin.
Take care, Canada. Be well. Explore often. Tourism Brothers out. Peace out, Canada. Take care. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for joining us.